My therapist kept sleeping during our sessions. I made sure she stayed awake for the review board. I started seeing Dr. Hutchinson after my brother died in a car accident. I needed help processing the grief, and my doctor recommended her, saying she was the best trauma specialist in the city. Her website said she had 20 years of experience and used cutting-edge techniques. She charged $300 per session and didn't take insurance, but I was desperate enough to pay. The first session seemed fine. She asked the right questions and seemed engaged. By the third session, I noticed her eyes getting heavy while I talked about finding my brother's belongings. By the fifth session, she was definitely asleep. Her head would drop, she'd jerk awake, then pretend she'd been thinking deeply. I was pouring my heart out about the day my brother died, and she was literally snoring softly. When I stopped talking, she woke up and said we should explore how I felt about that, even though she had no idea what I'd just said. I confronted her gently, asking if she was okay or needed to reschedule. She got offended and said she was using a meditation technique to better absorb my words. She actually told me that her unconscious mind was processing my trauma while her body rested. She said it was an advanced therapeutic method I wouldn't understand. The next session, she fell asleep within 10 minutes. I tested her by saying my brother had come back as a ghost and was standing behind her. She woke up 5 minutes later and asked how my week had been. When I told her what I'd said, she claimed she heard everything and was processing it internally. She said my hostility toward her methods was a projection of my anger about my brother. She told me I needed to trust the process and stop trying to control therapy. I kept going because I'd already paid for a package of 12 sessions up front. Each time she'd sleep longer. Once she slept for 40 minutes of the 50-minute session. When she woke up, she told me we'd had a breakthrough and scheduled me for twice a week. She said my energy was so heavy it was affecting her ability to stay conscious, and that meant we were doing deep work. She actually charged me extra for what she called intensive energy sessions. Other patients in the waiting room would mention how lucky I was to see her because she had a 6-month waiting list. I wondered how many of them were paying to watch her nap. One session, I brought coffee for both of us, thinking it might help. She refused it, saying caffeine interfered with her therapeutic presence. Then she fell asleep holding her notebook and dropped it, revealing she'd been writing grocery lists during our previous sessions. When I pointed this out, she said I was being paranoid, and those were metaphorical groceries related to my psychological needs. She told me milk represented nurturing and bread was foundational support. She kept a straight face while explaining that eggs symbolized new beginnings. I'd had enough, but she wouldn't refund my remaining sessions, saying I'd signed a no-refund contract. She said if I left now, I'd be abandoning my healing journey. She even threatened to tell other therapists I was a difficult patient who couldn't commit to treatment. That's when I got creative. I found out Dr. Hutchinson was up for a prestigious position on the state therapy board. The interview was in 3 weeks and included a live demonstration session with a volunteer patient. I volunteered through my cousin who worked at the board office, using a fake name and a different issue. The day of the interview, 5 board members were watching through a 2-way mirror. Dr. Hutchinson didn't recognize me because she'd been asleep for most of our actual sessions. I started talking in the same monotone voice I'd used during our real sessions, about fictional workplace stress. Within 15 minutes, her eyes were drooping. By 20 minutes, she was fully asleep in front of the entire review board. I kept talking about my imaginary boss while she snored softly. The board members were writing furiously. After 10 minutes of her sleeping, one of them knocked on the door. Dr. Hutchinson jerked awake and tried to play it off as deep concentration. The board member asked her to summarize what I'd shared. She gave generic therapeutic nonsense about processing and healing spaces. The board member then asked her to repeat the specific situation I described. She couldn't because she'd been unconscious. She tried to blame me, saying I was intentionally being boring to sabotage her. The board chairman said that staying awake during patient sessions was the absolute minimum requirement for a therapist. They discovered she'd been reported by 6 other patients over 2 years, but had always blamed their mental health conditions for their misperceptions of her sleeping. Full story on channel. Link below.